my understanding.
I didn't trade this for a lot, but
for coming to the debate. I will say that we have a debate audience forum question or the form up on our website. So if you have questions, please ask them there, but I will turn it right over to the Ubyssey.
Hello. Hello. Do it. It worked? Okay. Sorry, guys. But yeah, okay. Good morning, everyone. Thank you guys for being here. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge that we are on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territories of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam nations. Yeah, welcome to the Senate 2026 AMS Elections debate, hosted by AMS Elections and moderated by us at the Ubyssey. The debates can be followed along on the AMS live stream, as well as our live stream at ubyssey.ca with live updates. Okay. Let's get into debate rules. So candidates are not permitted to use laptops during the debate. You may have printed notes, written notes, or a blank piece of paper. Candidates will have 1 minute to make an opening statement on the onset and 1 minute to make a closing statement after all the questions are done. There is an online form being circulated for audience questions, but a reminder that candidates and any volunteers in your campaigns cannot submit questions. Candidates will each have 45 seconds to address moderator and audience questions, followed by an additional 30-second response time if you'd like to use it. If you want to use your additional response time, please raise your hand. I'll note down your name, and then I'll just go in order of who raised their hand first. Candidates should only start speaking once the moderator has called on them. I will give you a 15-second and 5-second warning. and candidates are expected to stop talking when their time is up. And if they continue to speak, this could be time deducted from future questions. So please just listen to us at the moderation and the AMS election staff. Does anybody have any questions before we get into it? No. Okay. So for opening response, I'm gonna start with Drayden, and then we're just gonna go this way in each question. We will start with the next person. Okay, Drayden, when you're ready.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Drayden. I am a former current senator, so I'm running for re-election to Senate. I previously served as the US VP academic and AMS VP AUA. In my time, I was able to secure $300,000 in for student groups. I increased the approval rates for professional activities from 54% to 80%. A bunch more you can see at my website, voteray.ca. And a lot of what I want to do here on Senate is a very slow body, as we've seen. It took us, I think, 4 months to change the start time of Senate from 6 p.m. to 5 p.m. So one of the things that I really want to do is to implement a lot of the actions that we talked about in the external review to make sure that our work is more efficient. Beyond that, I also want to introduce new graduation periods beyond the November and May options so that students who need those their papers can get it when they need it.
Thank you, candidate. Sultana?
Hi everyone, I'm Sultana. I usually pronounce she, her. I'm also double majoring in economics and cognitive systems. I used to be a 23-24 senator at large. In my time, I was at the awards committee and library committee, and I had the promise of extended IQ hours or extended library hours. And in my time at the library committee, I had the chance to work on it, and the work is still going on. We have still extended hours during our final attempts, and I want to go back with that promise that I would extend more hours. If possible, we can get at least till 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. And then I also worked at the awards committee, where I've advocated and delivered results through increased scholarships. There are multiple scholarships that you can see that targets people with disabilities, that targets athletes, that targets people who are juggling multiple jobs and working as here as part-time students as well. I've also worked on international student awards and scholarships. So I want to be back this year to
Thank you, candidate. Thank you. Brian?
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Brian Braga, They. I'm a graduate student at Ubyssey studying community planning, and I'm very privileged to be able to be here to speak to my candidacy for student senator at large. Having been a youth student at Ubyssey, tried my best to learn the ropes and understand all the different issues that are going on at this university, but this does not mean that I don't come with experience. I previously served 2 years at the McGill University Senate, first as the Arts and Science Senator, and then as president of the Student Society at McGill University, where I served as an equivalent to the AMS president. In that, one of the things I'm most proud of is getting a fall reading break for students at McGill University after years of advocacy, starting in my first year and ending in the third year of my studies. What I believe is building a student movement that is strong, that advocates for student interests, and that forces the university to meet the needs of students as demanded. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
Hello, I am Ash Dennis, they. I'm running for student at large. I'm a 5th year Connect student within the Bachelor of Education program. I've worked with advocacy committees and Indigenous advisory committees for a couple of years now, and I've worked previously within chairing some committees on AMS. I want to represent students across campus, especially when it comes to Indigenous initiatives, local initiatives, and making sure that we get funding for our students. Within my faculty and with my constituents, we have gotten about $20,000 of funding for students specifically within our faculty, and we focus a lot on making sure that our students can afford our education. I'm currently acting as our interim president, as our senior or secondary students within our beta program are currently on practicum, and I want to continue working on changing out policies, making sure that our students who are disabled or international or needing supports can get their food funding and scholarship funding.
Thank you, candidate.
Hi everyone, I'm Jasper. I use they them pronouns. I am running for re-election for a third term on the Senate. On the Senate, I have served twice as Student Senate Caucus co-chair. I'm currently the chair of the Agenda Committee, the vice chair of the Academic Policy Committee, the chair of a working group reviewing exam policies. And through my work on the Senate, we've had quite a few wins, including hundreds of thousands of dollars in undergraduate research funding, changing policies, including policies that require AI statements and syllabi, moving the PhD stipend $40,000, quite a bit more. I'm running for re-election because, as Drayden mentioned, the Senate is a very slow-moving body. There's still quite a bit of work to do in areas around affordability, in areas around accessibility, including now our settling of B135, and of course, I think the world issues like making sure that we have our relationships are not with universities, but with human rights abuses. Thank you.
Thank you, Jasper. Zarifa, when you're ready, is opening statements.
Hi everyone, my name is Zarifa and I'm running to be re-elected as our next student senator at large. As your two-term VPAOA and Student Senate Caucus co-chair, I've secured over $2.8 million for students, including funding for undergraduate research opportunities, food security, and international student aid. I've also led policy reviews for better policies on Gen AI use and academic integrity. Re-elected to the Senate, I'll focus on launching a centralized exam database with access to past exams, making syllabi available during course registration, extending the course withdrawal deadline to the last day of classes, reviewing policy LR7 for disability accommodations, and embedding temporary health issues into policy B135 for academic concessions, and removing mandatory exams in first and second year level courses. Thanks so much for being here, and I hope that on March 9th, I can count on your support.
Thank you, Zarifa. Luca, when you're ready, opening statements.
Hello, I'm Luca Jenkin, and I'm currently running to be part of the Student Senate at large. I'm running on making sure that the academic courses that we offer at Ubyssey align with what is demanded of the students and what the students are interested in learning. I'm also interested in making sure that the AI policy within syllabi are transparent and that students know exactly how AI will be used in their classes and if that is something that they want to contribute in and how that aligns with their own personal beliefs, as well as making sure that the universities that Ubyssey partners with aligns with the desires of the student body at large. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, on to our first question now. Do you have any personal experience with any area of Senate policy that motivates your candidacy? We'll be starting with Sultana.
The area, I think J135, the academic policies on concessions regarding religious and cultural events. I think I think that's the correct policy. If I'm wrong, I'm so sorry. But the concession policies are observing religious and cultural events. I want to work on that because I don't want the students to be be under stress of assignments or major exams while they have their cultural events and religious events going on, because we are a diverse body and I want all of our students to be able to observe their days. And yeah, that's something I'm really motivated and really want to work around, about having more better concession policies.
Okay. Thank you, candidate. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. At Yale University, I had the privilege of being able to serve on our academic policy committee. That was key and instrumental into securing full reading break for students. I hope to bring that sort of expertise here over at BBC and being able to sit on the academic policy committee if the Student Senate Caucus allows me to, if elected. In particular, LR7, disability accommodations policy, is quite important to me. I'm a disabled student myself, and I've had my fair share of issues with the Center for Accessibility, particularly in finding accommodations for graduate students, although disability issues come from a wide range of different perspectives. So I'm hoping to be able to draw from these personal experience to advocate for students in this way. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
Is this on? Okay. I want to focus a lot on the background and the academic concessions, specifically with the B135 as well as R7. I think experience both as a disabled student on campus as well as a student who academically usually needs a lot of concessions when I kind of need to take breaks during their term. I think there is a lot of things that we can do to support our students when it comes to these policies. I also want to continue to look at how we can making sure that these academic concessions support the students who have religious concessions or having concessions when it comes to just having temporary disabilities. I think working on that to make sure that students can actually access the classrooms either hybridly or online is important.
Thank you, candidate. Jasper?
Yeah. As I mentioned in my statement, I have quite a bit of experience in these areas. I've sat on the academic policy committee for 2 years now, and I'm the vice chair. Right now, we are reviewing policy D135. Many people mentioned that. There's a lot of work that's already been done on that area that I would like to continue. I also have worked both through academic policy, but also learning and research committee of the Board of Governors, which I sit on policy LR7, and I'd like to continue that work. And of course, I chair a working group on B102 and B103, the exam policies, and we're coming to a close on that work, and I'm very excited to finish that if I'm re-elected.
Thank you, Jasper. Zarifa?
Yeah, so lots of both personal, hold on, it's not working. Okay, it is now. Lots of both personal and professional experience. Firstly, I do also sit on the academic policy committee as well as that exam hardship or exam policies working group, so I'm intimately familiar with several policies, including B102 and B103 for exam policies, with priorities there specifically to extend the hardship period, but also take a look at specific marginalized students who are being disproportionately impacted, like commuter students. I also am quite familiar with LR7 as a student that is registered with the CFA, and also as someone that has done a tremendous amount of research into this policy and has further priorities for accessibility, as well as academic concessions, B135, and taking a look at temporary health issues within that, and B130 disability policy, which I was able to review earlier this year.
Thank you, candidate. Luca?
My past experiences, well, I've never had a position on Ubyssey Senate. I have done congressional and Senate work before, back in my home state of Iowa in the United States, where I sat on a student committee and proposed and wrote a bill to potentially canvass it to turn it into a law for mental health advocacy in our state and education. I do want to make sure that education is accessible for all students, no matter what background they come from. And as an international student with tuition fees, and making sure that you have to consider which education, which classes to take that you can financially have. I want to make sure that the classes available do match the demand. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, on to our next question.
Oh,
Fact.
Drayden again.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry, Drayden.
No problem. Just to clarify, this is a question about personal experiences.
Oh, is this your additional?
No, this is mine.
Oh, okay, sorry.
Yeah. This is a question about, okay,
Yes.
great. Yeah, so I do have personal experiences very much which inform my advocacy. I think one of the biggest reasons that I got involved was having trouble getting diagnosed with ADHD here at Ubyssey, and then getting registered with the CFA, and then once being registered with the CFA, just experiencing how not lenient the CFA is. Their whole thing is that they're supposed to be making our university experience more accessible, and it's just not an accessible organization. I think we really need to take another look at LR7, and specifically the procedures of LR7, which are way too stringent and don't allow for any wiggle room when there's maybe a small mistake on the professor's part or a small mistake on the student's part, which means that we essentially can't take our exam in the CFA.
Thank you, candidate. Sorry about that. Did anyone like to use their additional response time? Okay, let's move on then. Okay, faculty and student senators seem to both agree that engagement with Senate from both students and faculty is low. What besides creating a student-focused social media account can we do to better the engagement with Senate? And we'll be starting with Brian.
Yeah, I think, students know what their issues are, and I think it's important to try to reach out to students directly. Now, that isn't to say that individual student senators or the student senate caucus should take the burden of talking to the 60,000 students at UBC Vancouver, but the VP academics and all the different constituencies are very well placed to know the specific issues of their students in those faculties. So I would suggest, having those continuing conversations with those VP academics in those constituencies, and having them bring up, particular cases of importance or gaps in which our advocacy focuses aren't being met, and use that as really great opportunities to advocate for students whose voices aren't heard. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Ash?
Kind of want to agree with what Baruga said. I think talking with the VP academics is very important, especially when it comes to the Senate and making sure that Senate policy people understand and listen and kind of know what's going on and share with each other. But I think there's also ways that we can use both the social media, but also email chains. I know that there's some students who actively just don't want to use social media, but are like, oh, hey, I'm going to sign up for this email or newsletter so they can know the updates. So stuff that's like posted to Reddit that Solomon or Cream does can be also reformatted and submitted through email to the students as well. I think there's ways we can connect with our constituencies and our presidents to also share these with each other.
Thank you, candidate. That's fine.
I might want to offer a minorly different opinion. I do think individual student outreach is just really important, and specifically individual students that aren't necessarily involved in undergraduate societies or other groups like that. I spend a lot of time on the Senate speaking to individual students about issues they have, things from appeals, academic policy not being followed, not understanding the policy. And what I found is that students do care about the issues a lot. The issues they don't understand or particularly want to engage very deeply in the nuances of the kind of which policy is this, what is the numbering of the policy, what is the enforcement mechanism. They want to understand, explain their issues, and then have the people that they elected to do the work there. And so I do think individual student outreach is important, but I think it should be in a way that is issue focused rather than really
Thank you,
trying to
candidate.
dive deep.
Thank you. Zarifa?
Yeah, I'll echo some of the things that have already been said, specifically around leveraging constituency experiences. Constituencies are uniquely some of the people who have the largest tap into and connection to their unique student body. So I would be leveraging those constituency councils, executives. I'll also mention though, however, as student representatives, students elect us to do the job of advocating for them, of representing them on bodies of the university that no other students are there. I think for me, that's my first and foremost focus over individual student engagement and things like that. I know that what I do is informed, and I would focus on actually delivering results for students.
Thank you, candidate. Luca?
I think an easy way to do that is to just talk about it with the students that we have contact with and doing outreach stuff, like maybe holding events or like allowing some people to meet with student body representatives on Senate to talk about issues that they have concerns with, to then we can be better representatives. I also agree with what Jasper said, that there is an issue of not really understanding the nuances of exactly how the bureaucratical sense of how the Senate works and the current issues and the motions and policies that are happening. So I think doing an informational outreach and just being transparent with what we're doing would help.
Thank you, candidate.
I think the answer is pretty well covered by this point, but I guess I can reiterate. One, constituencies is really big. As a former VB academic of a constituency myself, I know that you have a very strong connection to your community. You know what the issues are, the issues that your community care about, and you know how to be able to communicate what's happening maybe at a higher level back down. As well, just touch grass a little bit, like the people that you're surrounding yourself with in class, you can communicate with those people too. And when there's 5 student senators plus 18 total with the faculties, that's actually a significant amount of people that can communicate with the people that they surround themselves in their social circles. So yes, communicating on a issue specific and communicating with constituencies.
Thank you, candidate. Hold on.
Yeah, no, I agree with everything everybody said before me for sure, and also to add on to some points. We have Ubyssey opinion, the Senate debunked or something every month, where we talk about where the student senators write about what that month's Senate meeting is going to be about. However, we can have those as newsletters to every emails, how we have AMS newsletters about what is going on at AMS councils as well, if there's something major happening. So we could have more I think newsletters. And we also have the social media committee coming up, maybe revamping it, maybe making it more mass produced. And also the student societies point is really important, connecting with the student societies and having the student faculty senators and at-large senators connect with the
Thank you, candidate. Okay, thank you, everyone. On to the next question. Oh, additional, yep.
So Sultana was speaking with Senate Recentered, and so while I have the opinion editor in the room, I'll just say I would like to strongly put on the record that we should bring back Senate Recentered. It was taken away a little bit ago, and I think it is an important way that the caucus can reach out to the student body and provide some detailed information.
Okay, thank you. Did anyone else want to use their? I'm gonna go with Brian and then Sultan.
Yeah, thank you on that. One thing I do want to highlight is, I guess, the lack of updates on the Student Senate caucus website. I found it very difficult to do specific research, figuring out my campaign points and current ongoing student priorities, as well as trying to find the Senate 2026 document that the Student Senate caucus based most of their advocacy out of. It's very difficult for me as a reasonably well-informed student to try to find out what student senators are prioritizing. I can't imagine how difficult it must be for students who aren't involved.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I didn't know that students recentered were like not continuing, but in my time it was like really good. Everybody would like whoever cared about like what Senate issues are about, the Senate Recenter was like the important part. And then also about the social media, the social media pages we have and also the website we have, we need to revamp it and we need to have more information out there, because if any students who is interested in knowing what Senate is doing or what they could do, they could find information there.
Thank you, candidate. Did anyone else want to use their additional response time? No. Okay. Ash, did you want to?
I just wanted to also say knowing that the website has been updated. It hasn't been updated since about 2024 year Senate, so it can be obviously updated. I know somebody submitted an IT report to get the transfer over and never got it, but I think making a new website can also just be just as easy.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, moving on to the next question then. Every year candidates for Senate call for a more permissive and inclusive accommodations policy that puts more control in the hands of students, like self-certification. Why might some faculty members or administrators oppose this, and how would you persuade them otherwise? We'll be starting with Ash.
Knowing specifically from the education faculty, there's a lot of ideas around how accelerated the program is. I know that a lot of would probably be a little bit more hard done by when it comes to concessions and courses, because the courses that they make or do within the second term, they only have about a few weeks before some of their teachers go right on practicum. So, of course, there's ways that students can go around it and kind of work with the CFA or work with the profs on their own specialized kind of CFA and accommodations and what they need for concessions. But I think there is a lot of ways that faculty can probably be talked to and consulted and worked with when it comes to this kind of stuff.
Thank you, Ash. Jasper?
Yeah, so we're reviewing this policy right now in academic policy, and part of those conversations have involved quite a bit of back and forth with the faculties. One thing that I think is super important to note in relation to V135 is the faculties have a lot of discretion to set their own procedures in the policy. That has led to some pretty inconsistent implementation and interpretation of the policy, which has really disproportionately affected students in certain faculties. And I think that one of the primary reasons that exists and why there's pushback to kind of any of the changes that the students have been pushing for is that implementation of any changes like this in the faculty is a resourcing issue. The advising offices need more resourcing. Of course, it's difficult for the Senate to push for, but one thing you will say is that resourcing has to follow policy, and if we change policy, resourcing will follow.
Thank you, candidate. Reva?
Yeah, I think some of the perspectives that faculty bring to this is really faculty are doing a lot of work. They have tremendous amount of workloads and they don't want any edits to the policy that increases their responsibilities. I think also there is the worry amongst faculty that some students are taking advantage of the accommodations policy, similar to the academic concessions policy. Of course, as students, that's horrible for us to hear. Many of us are going through really tough things and we need those policies to have a fair education comparable to our peers who are not in those need. In terms of how I would go around working with them, I have really excellent relationships with both administrators in Central University as well as faculty, and I would work around making sure that they understand their real lived experiences of students to further this.
Thank you, Zarifa.
I think the self-report policy is something that would be really helpful for students, especially for someone who can relate to that position, as much of my mental health documentation is limited or non-existent. For faculty members, for keeping track of it, I think the fear of students taking advantage of the policy is a very real one. However, I think it is underestimated how common mental health is, and the fact that a lot of students do deal with it. And using my background in mental health advocacy and talking with other people who are doubting updated mental health policy, I think I could reach out to people and walk them through why this change would be positive.
Thank you, candidate. Drayden?
Yeah, I think other candidates covered it pretty well. It is a resourcing issue. And not just a resourcing issue, there is a bit of frustration on the part of faculty. A lot of what we experience as students, we associate the faculty with the administration, but from my conversations with a lot of faculty, they associate students with administration from that top-down control. When they're forced to do X, Y, Z thing, they think, oh, we're forced to do it because of students. So they see that sort of control and it frustrates them, right? And as much as that it might seem a little bit irrational, there is a lot of legitimate concern because they've been forced to take on so much more work over the past 20 years as the university's expanded. So as people have said, it is a resourcing issue, and we should actually speak to that at Senate.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I agree with all of them as well. So for the point that the part how the faculty is gonna take about the self-report of accommodations and everything, I think it's important to normalize the conversations about mental health or any other accommodations that students might need on like a daily basis with the faculty. They should have like some sort of, I don't know if it has to be like any conversations, any seminars, or have like training modules on it or something like that. Like I think the issue of mental health isn't as like elaborately talked among the faculty as it is among like the student body, and how it's important for us. I think that should be clearly communicated to them, and the resourcing as well. I agree with that.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, and try not to echo what everyone else has said, because yes, it is a resourcing issue and more admin work for professors. I think specifically when it comes to the fear that giving accommodations isn't particularly academically rigorous, the arguments that I would say to those professors is that there are many professors that reuse assignments and various assessments that you can find online and just do that for completion. So I don't find it particularly honest in that sense to use that argument. I will say also, in terms of LR7s having a 3-year cap on what's considered a recent diagnosis, increasing that cap to 5 or 10 years or having documentation is important already. Thank you.
Thank you. Zarifa, additional response time? And then Ashton.
Yeah, something to add there. I think one thing we need to also take into account when we're working with faculty on this is that you have to lay out the benefits for faculty. That is the only way that they will come on side, so to speak. UDL Fellows, for example, is a really great program that empowers both faculty and staff to look beyond just the LR7 policy, but think of accessibility as a movement and as a way to really ingrain it on an institutional level. I would also be pushing for greater integration of UDL and a real endorsement by the university for that within the policy, which currently does not exist.
Thank you, Zarifa. Ash?
I was also going to echo the same thing when it comes to universal design of learning, UDL. I think it's important that students kind of are treated fairly as well when it comes to this process. I think University Ubyssey has responsibility to make sure that students have equitable access to classrooms and equitable access to their learning. And VP 135 and LR7 are also very good policies when it comes to that, and reviewing and understanding those and making sure that there's something there for our students to actually get the concessions they need.
Thank you, Ash. Luca?
On the topic of faculty training that was brought up, usually when it comes to mental health training within an educational setting, it is usually very surface level. It does not go into the full depths of what mental health can look like. So I think exploring what training or seminars are offered would be a good place to start for faculty. Because one of my strongest beliefs is that if the mental health of the faculty is not well, then the student's mental health will also not be well, because the teacher and faculty members do have an impact on the mental health of students. So I think doing both is a good way to approach the issue.
Thank you, candidate. Drayden?
Yeah, I think one of the things we can do, and the Senate has been doing this, is we're sort of starting to find our voice and our confidence as a governance body. I think the Senate has struggled to really make requests or be forceful, but ultimately it's the highest academic governing body of the university, and we need to be able to set direction and set policy. And as Jasper said, you set policy, resourcing needs to follow. So we need to say, we need this policy and you need to fund it and make those requests official at Senate.
Thank you, candidate. Sultana, did you want to use your?
Yeah, I just wanted to continue on my previous conversation about having like those training modules and everything, and Luca also touched on that. Thank you so much. You make my point. So on that, also the Drayden just mentioned about having more having more that what is it, then conversation, that body with the Senate, having that comfort, having that food in the Senate to talk about these issues with the faculty and everybody involved is very important. So I think the
Thank you,
conversation needs to
candidate.
be very long.
Jasper?
Yeah, I just want to say Drayden's absolutely right about the Senate and finding its voice as a body when it comes to conversations around things like resourcing. As the chair of the Agenda Committee, I've started having a lot of these conversations, including with the Budget and Academic Building Needs Committee, which is like the one Senate committee that does touch on kind of financial issues. I think we've started to do a lot of work, especially in the committee that I chair, in putting that forward as a voice of the Senate, but also the voice of students in the Senate, and that's super important.
Thank you, Jasper. Brian?
Yeah, I would also add that I think seeking a long-term approach is also important. In my work at the McGill Senate, we tried to identify ally professors who were generally supportive of student causes and get them to run for open faculty Senate positions as they came up, so that 1, 2, 3, 4 years down the line, when student priorities are coming up again and again, we have a faculty Senate caucus, a group of people that's there and willing to help with student priorities. So that's also something that I would advocate for. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Okay. Moving on to our next question. Ubyssey has previously discussed creating an ad hoc committee on institutional neutrality, but this has never come to fruition. What are your stances on institutional neutrality, and why do you think that? Starting with Jasper.
Yeah, I will say I opposed the creation of that committee when it was being discussed or proposed to the Senate, and of course it was not successful. My stance on institutional neutrality is I think an institution cannot actually be neutral. I think in a lot of situations, not taking a stance on issues, especially issues of huge moral significance, issues of human rights abuses, issues of genocide, not taking a stance on those things, or issues of more recently of reconciliation, not taking a stance on those things is letting the status quo continue, and I think that is a moral failing.
Thank you, Jasper. Zarifa?
Yeah, so my stance, there were talks of there being a policy for institutional neutrality as well. I don't think this is necessary. I think the university is already operating with a level of neutrality that it has always operated on, and we've never needed a policy, and we don't need it now. When it comes to this issue, I think there is a risk that going down a certain path on this line actually means you're infringing on people's academic freedom to engage in discourse about a wide range of issues, some of which may be controversial for one person or another. I think as a research institution, as an educational institution, we need to be able to protect everyone's ability to engage in academic discourse, and any policy or intention or statement that goes to infringe on that, I think, has no place at UBC.
Thank you, candidate. Okay.
I believe that institutional neutrality is not something that can or should exist at a university, especially in our current climate where there are so many issues to be faced. Especially for a university, for a recent example that prides itself on putting forth Indigenous voices and then not making a statement when a organization like One BC comes onto campus, and that directly goes against goes against the idea of what happened in Indigenous history, is something that should not be said. And by saying nothing, you are indeed putting forth the idea of, by saying nothing, you are saying something.
Thank you, candidate.
I think everyone has covered it. By the time we get here, there's not as much to say. But yes, being an academic institution, we study things. And when we study things, we come to decisions about those things. And there's a consensus about those things. For example, vaccines are safe. And therefore, the university decided to have a vaccine mandate. Was that institutionally neutral? I don't think so. I don't think that is a neutral policy. In the same way, we can come to conclusions about things when it comes to politics and history and how the world is working around us. So I don't think we should be neutral when we know for a fact that a genocide is happening. Yeah, I don't think I have anything else to say on that.
Thank you, candidate. Sultana?
Yeah, echoing everybody's sentiments here. Yeah, you cannot achieve institutional neutrality at a place like this, at a place where you're supposed to uphold academic freedom, research, and like innovation and all of that, and also study history, arts, politics. So it's important to have those conversations, have those debates and discourses around like issues and around any social justice issues. And university is the place. University is where you started. You start, and any student protest you have seen in the world in the past, in the history, has been fundamental, has been key to having any sort of change till like as big as like regime change. So it's important to not have institutional neutrality, because this is where I think bigger things about like social justice and all of that begins.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I think that the conversation around institutional neutrality always comes when there is a dominant political voice that is being challenged. And I think at this university, with our student body that believes there is a genocide going on in Gaza, this sort of conversation just serves to stifle those voices and the advocacy that many students are putting forward today. We know that progressive movements, student movements that start in universities spread to the rest of society. And we've definitely seen a shift over time in terms of the recognition of occupation in Palestine. The climate movement, various student movements over the years that have brought legitimacy to the issues that students are advocating for. And any policy like this only serves to stifle student voices. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
Not to echo what has been said earlier, but I also do want to say that even if the UBC tries to be neutral, it is impossible to be neutral, especially on this campus. As an institution, they're always going to hold some sort of view, even if it's not thought or said. I do think that me as a senator at large, I do think that students have a lot of power and a lot of responsibility, not responsibility, but ways to actually voice what they want to hear through university. And I think not being neutral will do more change than being kind of in a neutral space.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, moving on to our next one. Okay. Sultana, do you want to? Okay.
Yeah, and the information, the talk we were having about that stances on Gaza and all of that. So for that, the UBC has been kind of hypocritical, if you guys notice. Like we didn't cut ties with Israeli universities when the genocide has been going on for 3 years, but we did cut ties with Russian universities when the Ukraine-Russia war broke out. We did it in the very first year. We passed that motion at the Senate, but we were still not able to get a majority on these motions. We do it every year at the Senate. I know the Student Senate Caucus has been working on it. To get like cutting ties with like Israeli universities that take part in apartheid and genocide.
Thank you.
Going off what Sultana said, that yes, UBC is currently is in collaboration with 3 Israeli universities. However, we have no contracts to work with any Palestinian universities, and even then, there's been no effort to cut ties with any of them. And I think it is very important that we do consider cutting ties with Israeli universities, as there is a lot of support for it in the student body, as seen with the recent passing of the referendum.
Thank you, candidate.
I think it's also important to say, just this is my point of view, that like the genocides and everything, when people deny genocide, they deny the genocide of indigenous peoples and come to this campus, I think there should be somewhat of a statement coming from UBC and denying or not talking about or just being neutral about the genocide that's happening in Gaza. I think UBC should be at least saying something.
Thank you, candidate. Jasper?
I mean, to Luca's point on partnerships with Palestinian universities, there's a genocide. Most of the universities have been razed to the ground. There is not an opportunity for those partnerships. I was one of the students that brought forward the motion to cut ties with the universities complicit in human rights abuses, specifically Israeli universities, and institutional neutrality was one of the points that was used to argue that down. It is not something that should be the position of a university that exists in a fully global context when there are massive issues of human rights.
Thank you, candidate. Okay,
Yeah, I guess a different perspective I want to bring into this is how different university administrators stifle student voices. I had the privilege of being able to sit in on the student forum at Allard, the law school, about racism that's all going on at the law school, and hearing stories of administrators specifically telling students, we want you to keep quiet on this, you're making the law school look bad. This could affect recommendation letters and placements for law student law jobs after the fact. Hearing this across various different schools and faculties is really sickening, and that's something we should also recognize.
thank you, candidate. Okay, moving on to our next question now. This year, the Education Library was moved to corner partially due to budget cuts. The 2025 to 26 librarians report also noted a strained budget and potentially having to slim down the library's operating hours. While Senate is not directly in charge of Ubyssey finances, how do you plan to protect or expand the library's resources with limited financial capacity? We'll be starting with Zarifa.
Yeah, so across the university this year, we're seeing a 3% budget cut for every single unit. This was 2% the year before and the year before. So within the context of everything that's been happening with the government and international students, it is a difficult time when it comes to the UBC budget. For the library specifically, there's a couple strategies here. First and foremost, we need to take a look at the fact that we buy books, I believe in USD, and we're in Canada. We incur a lot of extra costs as a result of that. Furthermore, we can also look at work loan funding. I'm so sorry, Jasper. I can't see the time limit when. Thank you very much. Another one is work loan funding. The library uses a lot of work loan students. Work loan is something that is going to impact not just the library, but a lot of units and alleviate some of those cost pressures there. So a twofold strategy focusing both on specific library strategies, but also broader university.
I agree with a lot of what Zarifa said, and that I do agree that getting funding from work loan programs would be a great benefit to the library and for operating hours, especially for such a crucial resource on our campus. I know that I've used library resources. I've studied in the library. It is one of the biggest draws to coming to a university is access to academic knowledge. So I do think that trying to find a way to make the library work the best it can with limited resources is an important issue.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, thanks. I think this year in the librarian report, they were actually able to make up a lot of the shortfalls. And last year when we were looking at the report, it was pretty bleak. It didn't seem like they were going to be able to keep services really at all to what they had been previously. They did, I think, cut some student positions. And obviously we've seen some of the results of that. But I do think that there is a optimistic outlook for the library going forward in the future. They've been able to raise a ton of money. People are very generally supportive of libraries. Libraries are good for university and generally for people and students in particular. So I am pretty optimistic just given how they've been able to turn it around the last year.
Thank you, candidate.
As a workland student myself at Woodward Library, I do agree with whatever everybody said that we can have more workland students positions filled in because we can get more workland funding that can help having the library operations going on. And I've seen personally at Woodward Library that we do have been increasing hiring more workland positions over the years. So that's an important part we can look into. And also we can as a Senate, we can lobby for more funding from the provinces and the federal governments because the budget cuts are there. It's there, and we need to be looking for sources where we can fill up those cuts, those deficiencies. So looking out, lobbying for more funding like that, more national level funding for libraries could be, I think, beneficial.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I think one priority of mine would be to enshrine library access, particularly having one library being 24 hours into our Senate 2029 presentation to the Senate. Should I be elected and should the Senate caucus decide this as a collective priority? I think it's important to negotiate from a place of strength so that, meeting in the middle, at least we don't get any cuts. If we just advocate for, maintaining the levels as they are, there's that, negotiating wiggle room that will inevitably lead to further cuts. So I think being a little bit more ambitious in our asks in the future and negotiating from that position of strength is important moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
It's okay. It's just flashing. So okay, there we go. I've had a lucky chance as an education student to be an undergraduate representative on the ELC Education and Learning Commons Advisory Committee, specifically being able to sit in and be actually part of these discussions when it comes to how they reallocate kind of allocate the building as it's currently under kind of what's going on with there. I think at least responding to what Brian said, I think all libraries should at least have 24-hour access when it comes to exams. I think just having one library may not be enough, especially when it comes to student space. And I think there should be at least a lot more space for students to be able to access this space when they're learning. And I think there should be a lot more funding when it comes to work learn and a lot more ways we can get more funding outside of the Senate and the university itself.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I see what Drayden said when you get to the end, basically everything's been said. But one thing I think is super important to mention is, as Zarifa said, is that the library purchases a lot in USD, and it's not just for books, it's also for journal subscriptions. That's actually really the biggest one there. The university has cut down on journal subscriptions quite a bit, and so students have lost access to quite a few academic articles and journals. We need to be doing work, and actually one of the few places where the Senate really does have an influence over budget discussions is in the library committee in relation to libraries. We need to be doing the work to make sure that libraries are protected. They have had their budget impacted the most in real terms because of the exchange rate, and the university needs to be adding to their budget. It needs to be one of the areas of budget priorities to compensate for that.
Thank you, candidate. For additional response time, we'll be starting with Teresa first.
Yeah, something when it comes to funding opportunities for the university in general, which hasn't been mentioned yet, is I think donor funding. It's something that is both emerging at this university, but is also underutilized. There's a huge potential there for us to leverage wealthy donors and alumni of the university to fund things like the library, fund things like international student needs-based aid, fund things like housing, if we want to have that conversation. It's a highly underutilized aspect, and I think as we move forward and we're getting less and less money from the province and less tuition revenue, we need to think of alternative, effective ways for funding the university, and donor funding would be one of those.
Yeah, I was gonna echo kind of the same thing from Zarifa. I think there's avenues of which we can access the kind of the donors that we have around the university, as well as accessing more resourceful and kind of cheaper options than just the option when it comes to library commons. I do think that also we can get more funding when it comes to students, when it comes to affordability for food bank, when it comes to affordability for housing, when it comes to any food initiatives. I know students within the education faculty specifically have continued to ask for food access because a lot of them are going without sometimes.
Thank you, candidate. Did anyone else want to use their additional response times? Okay, let's move on to the next question then. Okay, if you're new to Senate, tell us about how you've been preparing for your campaign and learning about governance, and tell us if you've attended a Senate meeting recently. If you're not new, tell us what you think the major obstacles were in being able to accomplish your goals in the past year or previous terms. Be more specific than Senate is slow. Luca, we'll be starting with you.
As a person who is new to Senate here, a lot of the research I did was looking into the issues that my peers have brought up in concerns to academics and education and stuff like that. I also just did a quick look through of recent policies and current happenings within the Senate. I have not attended a Senate meeting due to schedules, but I do think that it is an important issue and that more awareness needs to be brought to what the Senate is working on, and that I do want to further my work and add my own personal experiences to the Senate.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I would say probably one of the biggest parts of the learning curve for being a senator or student advocate in general is just how decentralized this university is. You want to get something done, you find out you have to talk to 5 different people for that to happen. And so really that is, I think, that figuring out all the different people that you need to talk to, and also all of the different policies that you need to learn to understand what goes into governing this university. I think it's just this vastness. There's a huge amount of policy documents that you have to read to be able to just operate in the space, to be able to have a conversation with people. There's like jargon that people will say that 2 senators will understand, but really isn't obvious to a lay.
Yeah, no, for sure. I think it's important to have the priorities aligned. I think that it's very hard to get majorities at the Senate. Like whenever you want to pass something, there's or whenever if you brought up something at the committees, not everybody is gonna like agree with you, align with you. That's why it's important to get our priorities aligned. And I also think that it's important to closer the gap between students, faculties, and admins. There's 3 levels, and 3 levels of people have different priorities set and everything. So it's important to get all of those aligned and getting those majorities of say. For example, when I wanted to work on extended library hours, at the library committee, everybody was like, "Oh, I don't think there's any demand for library hours, extended library hours." I was like, "Okay, that's a huge difference between what the student wants and what the Senate wants."
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll be upfront and honest in saying I have not attended a UBC Senate in particular. I do know that a lot of the work stems from committees. That's where most of the work is done in Senate, and at that point, it's just a rubber stamp approval from the body. I do have a lot of experience stemming from my time at McGill, having sat on that Senate for 2 years, and familiarizing myself with the procedures and various documentation at that point. What I've tried to prioritize is meeting students and understanding what students' needs are. For the preparation for my current campaign, I've spoken to current student senators, reviewed Senate 2026 policies of the Senate that are of particular importance to me, and I feel like that, in combination with my previous experience, really sets me up for success in this role. Thank you.
Although I'm new to Senate elections, I'm not new to actually attending meetings or online or virtually or reading up on my notes. I have already done work with kind of consulting and talking with previous student senators, and been working with quite a few of them for multiple years now. And I've also worked with a lot of faculty, and I know talking to a lot of faculty is kind of a bit of part of the job because it's decentralized. I know Jordan kind of talked about that. But I've also worked specifically with Allison, who is the director for the ISP, Indigenous Strategic Plan, specifically talking with her and understanding the different intricacies when it comes to Indigenous students on campus as an active student. As well as I've read up on many of the previous meeting minutes of the last year over the Senate, and also actually understanding what the policies mean and actually understanding what's actually going on with these meetings and what the student senators are currently doing within the Senate caucus.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, well, I'm not new to the Senate, so I'll answer that part of the question. One thing I'll start off with is actually this has been a very, very successful year in a number of areas, including policy changes, undergraduate research funding, and now the PhD minimum funding. I think we've got a long time. But to what your question is the biggest hurdle or challenge that we had, I think it was actually a lot of it was in relation to the student caucus as a body. We, of course, had re-election is probably a more accurate term. Students didn't get put on their committees until basically the beginning of the school year, so they lost about a third of their term on committees. And we didn't have a full caucus, and one thing that I will be pretty strong in saying this year is that the Student Senate Caucus is a very valuable body when it comes to advocacy and when it comes to having a unified voice, and we should have a full caucus.
Thank you, candidate. Sarika?
Yeah, I think first and foremost, secretariat resourcing in the Senate is a huge issue. You can feel that trickle down at the committee level, at the working group level, and certainly the Senate should be operating with more funds and resourcing than that. That's been a challenge. I think on the note of SSC, I think I'm quite disappointed by the lack of engagement that several student senators this year have displayed when it comes to it. Student Senate Caucus is meant to function as a voting bloc. It is meant to give us the ammunition to be able to fight against things that do not benefit students. And without certain student senators, being there at all of the SSC meetings, doing the prep, being there at Senate fighting for what's right for students, we simply can't get that done. So as someone that has tried to attend every single meeting I could, that's been quite disappointing for me to see.
Thank you, candidate. Any additional response time? Jasper?
Yeah, I'll just say on Zarifa's comment on resourcing, she's absolutely correct. I think the Senate Secretariat is woefully under-resourced for not just the work that they do, but the work that we want them to be doing in relation to kind of long-term strategic priorities, larger policy changes, things like that. As the chair of the Agenda Committee, I was one of the senators that helped bring forward a proposal to bring a joint meeting of the Agenda and the Budget Committees to discuss Senate Secretariat resourcing. Drayden, of course, is making a face because he also participated in that. And so I'm really excited for the progress that we've made on that because that will really help solve it and some of those issues as well.
You can. Drayden?
Yeah, just on the resourcing question, I think, yeah, as well, sorry, I'm losing my train of thought, actually. Never mind, actually skip.
Okay. That it? Okay. Moving on to our, oh, Sultana, go ahead.
Yeah, I've been on the Senate 2 years ago, as what I was saying, that being on, for example, that the library issue and having that head librarian say, oh, we don't think we can go, like, we don't gauge that much demand from student and everything. So the point was there is this gap between Senate and the student bodies, and it's important to bridge those gaps, have our priorities aligned, and, you know, the decentralizing of the university issue that really impacts whatever work you want to get done. So yeah, that slow administration process needs to be like, you know, revamped.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to our next question. It is an audience question. The person says, in the past, student senators have seemed distant and asked if internal disagreements were getting in the way of advocacy. Given this, they asked if candidates will commit to working together as one united student front to advocate for all students, and we'll be starting with Drayden.
Wow, pretty appropriate to start with me on this one. I think I'm one of the first student senators in a while not to participate in the Student Senate Caucus, so I do think this might be very relevant to me. In my particular case, I would be willing to I'll obviously work as a united front with the student senators. In the case of the Student Senate Caucus, I don't personally believe that I could have had productive relationship with the chairs this year. There's been obviously, you know, for those who know, some bad blood, and I didn't see that it would be productive, that I could have trust in the caucus to be able to communicate in a fair and really non-damaging way to all of our mental health.
Yeah, it's definitely important to have a united front as students, because I think we have the least number of seats as in the Senate, like the student seats, like 18 seats, respective to the faculty seats. So it's important to have everybody like aligned on our priorities, because otherwise we won't get a say as a majority at the Senate. We still don't get our ways out there. So it's important to have a united front, have all the 18 student senators like diligently working on the goals and like agreeing on the goals is like really important. Coming to a discourse is really important. So I would really encourage the future student senators to like, you know, come to the same goal.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, on this question, I think the structure of the Student Senate Caucus does need to be changed. I think that there should be more of a focus on collaboration rather than a top-down approach from the co-chairs selecting which students should sit on which committee. It should be decided collectively. And on that, where there are opportunities for student priorities to be there for a unified front where we're able to advocate together, that's absolutely something I advocate for. However, there may be policies that have disproportionate impacts on different faculties, and I won't judge a particular student faculty senator for voting against that particular priority if it disadvantages them for that particular case. I think it's okay to have disagreements here and there, but on the big issues where we all agree, it's important to have that united front.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to put forward like just a point that all student senators are kind of elected by the student body, so like of course that they represent a lot of the students, if not all our students on our campus. I do think that having the full 18 would be a lot stronger when it comes to students, but as is, we don't want it to be like too divided and have that advocacy when it comes to 18. It's a lot stronger than a couple of voices, I do think. But I've also had experience when it comes to people actually having disagreements and conflicts within a lot of spaces around this campus, especially when it comes to different happenstances, when it comes to student groups, especially AMS or other student bodies. I do think that there's a lot of the things that when conflict comes into this, mental health is a really big thing that comes with our student body. I think we do need to give support when it comes to that as well.
Thank you, candidate. Jasper?
Yeah, I kind of already answered a lot of this question in one of the previous questions, but I'll reiterate that first and foremost, I do think we need a fully united caucus. But there's some points that were made there that I think are very reasonable. First, to Brian's point, I do think there needs to be a bit of a governance review of the way that the caucus operates, and this is something that I brought forward at the end of my first term as co-chair. There were some challenges there because of now some of the interpersonal stuff that was mentioned. And on that point, I think the reality is that there will probably always be some form of conflict in between large groups of people that are trying to work together in long periods of time. The reality is that the most important thing is moving past that and realizing that the reality is that we are elected here to do the work, and we should be doing the work no matter what else is kind of on the inside.
Thank you, candidate. Zarifa?
Yeah, we're in student politics. There will always be politics part of it. I've proven to you that I rise above that in every single case. I'm the only one sitting here that has actual funding wins for students in just 1 year alone. So when it comes to anything about the petty politics, the inner whatever, my priority here is delivering for students. My priority here is securing the allies on the Senate to deliver for students. My priority within the SSCY I ran for co-chair is to ensure that we actually function as a voting bloc, which I think we lost the year before. I've tried to rebuild that in some capacity, but of course that requires the entire Student Senate caucus to participate. So once again, the petty politics of it has never mattered to me and will never matter, and I will keep delivering for students regardless.
Thank you, candidate.
To not bear repeating what many people have said and what I largely agree with is that when you do work with a lot of people in advocacy settings, there is usually conflicts when it comes to specific issues. And when it comes to that, I think the best way to approach it is to, first of all, acknowledge that there is a disagreement there, but then being able to focus on the bigger picture at large and what our actual goals are as a student senate, and working towards that together. Because I think one of the strongest things that we do have as a student caucus is being able to unite as a front and come together for issues that really do matter to the student body.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, we'll be going into additional response time, starting with Ash, Drayden, and then Jasper.
It's okay. As you would also state from before and continue on, I think that disagreements are things that happen within these spaces, and I do think that when conflicts happen, when there's constructive conversations, when there's actual commitment to each side to actually talk with each other, I do think that there's a constructive way that students can actually work together on Student Senate caucus, and as well as through the Senate to actually work together on initiatives. I know there's going to be contrasting views when it comes to these spaces because it's all the campus, it's all students, so they're all going to have different point of views when it comes to these different initiatives.
Thank you, candidate. Drayden?
Yeah, one thing I just wanted to address is you don't actually have to be on the caucus in order to communicate to other student senators. It turns out, there's not a rule that says if you're not on the student caucus, you can't DM people or maintain relationships with people. I still have relationships with other student senators. And for me, I think the current, as Brian addressed, the current top-down approach, I thought was not, I don't agree with. I think that we should have a more broad membership-based structure, and if that was the case, then maybe I'd participate.
Thank you, candidate. Jasper?
There was a line there rising above the petty politics that I liked, if it wasn't a bit bold. One thing I just want to finally say at the end of this is that the caucus does matter, and we've seen this even this year. Maybe it was something that's less important to the average student as the Senate start time people love talking about. But the reality out of that situation is that there was a pretty united front in the beginning from the faculty against or in favor of that change, and the caucus was able to show their power that the students were opposing something. And 18 student senators at a very, very large Senate were able to get something blocked. And so the power of the caucus does matter, and that power will matter a lot more when it comes to much larger issues.
Thank you, candidate. Brian?
Yeah, I just want to say how much I hate the word student politics or student politician. I think fundamentally we're a student union. I think we should operate with that, organizing, collective bargaining mindset in mind. And in collective bargaining, there's power in numbers, and having that, collective voice as much as possible, deliberating together, not always agreeing, but having the best interest of students first and foremost is absolutely important. And so I want to change our discussion of how we advocate for students away from politics and more towards advocacy and union organizing. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, that's it for additional response time. Let's go to our next question. Last year, over 200 faculty members signed an open letter opposing a new draft of the Senate's academic freedom policy. Little has come out about the draft proposal since then. What do you think UBC's academic freedom policy should look like and why? We'll be starting with Sultana.
Can you repeat that question?
Last year, over 200 faculty members signed an open letter opposing a new draft of the Senate's academic freedom policy. Little has come out about the draft proposal since then. What do you think UBC's academic freedom policy should look like and why?
I believe Ubyssey's academic freedom policy should be about upholding the academic freedom of the individuals, like part of the universities. That starts from all the researchers, faculty, and the students as well. So I think it's important to advocate for to have a stance for all of it, like not just the faculty. There are other researchers, there are other graduate students, and part of it. So I think it's important to have give importance to everyone involved in it. So I think it's for the academic freedom part. I don't know the details of why they're against, why 200 teachers were against it, but I think having more more concrete policies around academic freedom could be easy to uphold.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I think academic freedom is conveniently used as a principle depending on which side of a particular argument someone is. It can work both ways, and I think it's just important to recognize that we're all trying to advocate in our own particular ways, and institutional power actively tries to trump grassroots advocacy when it goes against the status quo. On that, I think something important, if a new draft should ever be included, is a specific clause saying administrators or faculty members may not speak with student advocates in a way that encourages retribution. In the earlier example that I gave for faculty of law students, I think that's absolutely unacceptable. And if there is a new draft, that's something I would include. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
Kind of also to reiterate from before, but also continue on academic freedom. I do think that students and faculty should be able to study and research the things that they would like in all places. I do think that when it comes to diverging point of views, it kind of leads to kind of the space where these professors or these profs or these faculty will sign these things because they want to kind of shut down these grassroots movements. I do think that student voices, but also faculty voices, when it comes to these different kind of things, should be allowed to be kind of voiced and concerned, because it's a concern that a lot of students may have or a lot of faculty may have. So being able to actually allow for this kind of reasonable response and also academic freedom is kind of important for academics.
Thank you, candidate. Jasper?
Well, first to Brian's point, there certainly will be another draft coming. I sit on the academic policy committee, and there's been a lot of discussion on academic freedom policy for many, many months now, since the last version came before this event. A couple of things to answer the question specifically that I think need to be in the policy. First is who is able to exercise academic freedom, and it should be as broad as possible. It really should be students, especially students, faculty, research staff, and then of course I think there's a kind of extra area, which is invited guests, and invited is really important there. Another thing, of course, is an actual enforcement mechanism, and that was really one of the reasons of this policy to go forward. There needs to be a way to make sure that people's academic freedom is not being infringed.
Thank you, candidate. Teresa?
Yeah, so as I stated before when we were talking about institutional neutrality, one of the most foundational parts of this is that academic discourse needs to be protected amongst everyone within the university community. I think furthermore, the policy needs to be applied fairly to any sides of any given argument. And what's the most important thing for me and most pressing for me at the moment is creating the procedures for what happens when someone's academic freedom is infringed upon based off of what it's defined as in the policy. Without that procedures, without some really careful thinking about about the applications of this policy, it's essentially a glorified statement, which is what we sort of already function with, and it doesn't seek to address any issues. So I would like to see some tangible ways that we can apply this policy and protect this for individuals.
Thank you, candidate.
I think when it comes to academic freedom, it is important that no matter if they are a student or faculty, that they should be able to voice their opinions, not only in a classroom setting, but also within the work that they write. As when it comes to university, you are here to explore your ideas and to help manifest them into the world, to add them to academic discourse, where discourse is crucial to building upon the current academic understanding of our world. And this is especially important in disciplines that closely relate to your own personal beliefs and opinions, like sociology or political science, where voicing your opinions about topics and issues is part of the class and part of what you're studying. So I think it's very important for it to be protected.
Thank you, candidate.
Yeah, I think this is a particularly heated topic at UBC. We have, professors in particular have a very strong culture of valuing their academic freedom. And when we talk about academic freedom, that can mean anything from not just speech, but also how they teach. So obviously there are limits to academic freedom because technically it's a limit on your academic freedom when the CFA tells a professor, you need to give this person extra time and a half on their exams. So clearly there are limits. I worry a little bit about enforcement mechanisms because as Brian mentioned, you can always use academic freedom as a cudgel to move in the direction that you want. So I worry that enforcement mechanisms can be used to say, hey, I should be allowed to teach my students how I want to teach them, and you can't stop me.
Jasper?
Yeah, two things. One thing that I didn't mention that I think is super important that people have been really advocating to get included in the policy is specifically academic freedom being the right of members of the university community to criticize UBC, to criticize the institution. This is something that many of the unions on campus are advocating for, and I think it's something we should certainly support. On the enforcement mechanism for it, I think there does need to be one. I think this policy doesn't do anything if there isn't a way to enforce it. But I do have some concerns with the governance that is currently set up for the ad hoc committee that's being proposed, and I do want to take a deeper look into that.
Thank you, candidate. Next is Buka.
When it does come into enforcing academic freedom and how that should be enabled, I think there is limits, especially with what is for at a university that prides itself on knowledge and pushing forth reliable knowledge. I think that there needs to be limits on what does constitute academic freedom, especially to making sure that the things that people are claiming they have the right under academic freedom aligns with what is currently understood and currently accepted in broader academia.
Thank you, candidate. Next is Sultana, then Ash, then Brian.
Yeah, I think it's very important to have all the policies around academic freedom to be set against the same standard. Like it's fair and applicable to everyone, irrespective of like if you're a faculty or student. Because we have seen cases where students were bullied in their classroom by their professors, and like literally just because they were expressing like their opinions. And then we also have seen faculties being sent on forced leaves because of their work. Because it always depends on the enforcers, like what they deem as the as what constitutes an academic freedom and what not. So I think we need to have like equitable policies, equitable standards for everyone.
Ash.
I think just also just from personal experience, I was in the education program for the past year. I'd be able to be in this course, which was quite wonderful. But I did see that there was a lot of students from many different backgrounds, especially those older age students, people in the 40s and 50s, who have just these divergent views. And sometimes they would have to leave the room when people were discussing some topics because it was against their beliefs or their thoughts. And I do think that there's ways that we can go about this, which may be outside of the enforcement policy, but actually just having like training, learning, and understanding when it comes to these kind of initiatives and topics and students.
Thank you, candidate. Brian, and then Sarika.
Yeah, I guess to bring this into like a more tangible context, when the One BC group came, as Luca was alluding to, various Indigenous groups within the province, including the Indigenous Student Society, called on shamed the university for not upholding their commitment to reconciliation and denying access for One BC to be on campus and using the academic freedom modality. So I think it's important to deny hate, vitriol, and nihilism and not use that as an excuse. Thank you.
Thank you. Sarika?
Yeah, when we're talking about the procedures of the policy or in just writing the policy, something to take care of there is ensuring that this policy, in creating this new policy, it doesn't actually infringe upon any other policies that currently exist. So LR7, for example, SC7 for discrimination, and just off the top of my head, there's quite a few policies which have other investigatory procedures, enforcement mechanisms, things like that. And for the students who are impacted by these policies and then by the realities of it, academic freedom should not be a further hurdle for them.
Thank you, candidate. And for additional response times, we'll be now moving on to closing remarks. We'll be starting with Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much for listening to our debate. I think what I bring to the table is a wealth of experience, both working inside and outside the university system. Inside the university system from 2 years of Senate experience, and as president of the student union at McGill, but also outside the system in terms of working with student groups and activist movements to further priorities that students have on campus. I bring both sides of the table, and being a graduate student, having that full complement of experiences would make me a really valuable resource for students, regardless of what background or program that you are from. This election, you have a really important choice for who's going to represent you on the Senate. I think there are a wealth of different knowledges and experiences that everybody here comes to the table with, but I hope that I've earned your vote and that you consider my particular experiences and what I bring to the table. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate.
I'd like to also thank everybody for coming out to the debate today and being able to listen and actually read up on what's being written for us. I just wanted to continue to iterate on kind of my main points that will be on my red website for AMS.ca. Specifically, that no student should have to choose between groceries and academic access. I do think that students should be able to be able to access food security and about their identity and background not being kind of questioned within this university. I do think that ensuring every student has the basic supports when they come to the classrooms, so LR7, 135, 35, and other kind of concessions and academic kind of policy changes. I do think working to get to academic policy committee, library committee, awards committee will be great to work to actually advocate for these student needs. And I do think continuing on with our students, be able to make sure that our students are able to access the learning that they need in their schools, in our classrooms is very important. Making sure that we also implement these different Indigenous topics in Indigenous science and consulting with our Indigenous students' body, access and such. And, yeah.
Thank you, candidate.
I will be the third person to thank everyone for coming out today. I think as you've seen in this debate, I'm a candidate here that really does have the knowledge and experience to achieve what students are looking for. I didn't have any notes. I got a blank piece of paper, but I didn't get a pen, so I've been doing something without notes. I've been doing this work for a very long time, and I really do know how to contribute to the wins that students need to see. But I also think I have the values that students are looking for in relation to areas of accessibility, the affordability crisis, of course, areas of really important moral issues, including, of course, human rights and making sure that partnerships are not with universities and listen human rights abuses. I've had a lot of time on the Senate to get this work started, and we really love your support, so I could really continue that. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, candidate.
Many people are running on having experience. Not all experience is the same. While others may have experience in making promises, I'm the only candidate running for board and Senate who has the experience and track record of delivering results. I don't just promise, I deliver. The choice you're making is clear. It's between some fresh perspectives, experienced promise makers, and one person experienced in delivering results. You place your faith in me on 4 university-wide ballots in a row by now, and I haven't let you down so far, and I don't plan on doing so anytime soon. That's why I hope on March 9th I can count on your support. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. Okay.
Well, I currently do not, this is my first time running for a student body at large. I do have a lot of experience in getting things done and also in previous bodies of work where I believe I currently have the knowledge set and skills to be able to represent students accurately and be able to bring a fresh new perspective to the Senate body at large and help push forward in incentives that we do want to accomplish as not only a student at large, but also the Senate. Again, I do want to make sure that people, when they come to university, they get the knowledge that they want, that they are paying for, and that they so desire, and that they have the abilities and tool sets to access that knowledge no matter what their background is or whatever accessibility needs that they have. And that also, when it comes to AI, that there's a lot of transparency in that within education, and that the university can be a place where students can come to learn, and that they do not need to worry about about their current academics or what their academic future may look like.
Thank you, candidate. Drayden?
Yeah, thanks. With the extra time that I have here in my closing statement, I want to talk a bit about one of my campaign points, which is the additional graduation periods in November and May. Currently, students all over are trying to apply outside of the normal times because they need it for work permits, and especially with some issues that we're having with the United States, our southern border, it's now needed more than ever. So Senate is approving outside of those normal times, and one thing that I want to run on that I think is very feasible in this next year is to be able to have additional periods, one in September and one in January, so that if you finish your courses in the summer term, or if you finish your courses in winter term one, you can graduate right then and get your papers right then. Additionally, on top of that, I'm really excited about the cultural shift that we started to see on the Senate, where people aren't just asking, how can we get this done? It's, okay, let's try this thing, let's try that thing. So I'm excited about that shift, and I'm excited to keep working on that. And I hope I can count on your support.
Thank you, candidate. Donna?
I was on my first day last time I ran for Senate and I won. I had no experience, but I had my purpose, I had my passion, and I think that led me to be elected and work in that year, and I have delivered results, as I've mentioned in my introductory statement. So over the years, I think I have built on that. I had more learning curve. I had been presiding over, I have had integral roles like vice president or president of several student clubs and student societies. So I believe I do have what it takes, the purpose and passion that I had in my first year, and I'm going in my last year now, to work for our students, to collaborate with our students, and have all of our first stations, talked about all of our first stations and everything. And on that, I want to give a good learning experience. I want to have a good learning experience for all of the Ubyssey students, no matter what background you are from, what community you're from. And I want to have it on the platform of accessibility, affordability, and
Thank you,
mental
candidate.
health and well-being.
Thank you. And that is all from the Senate debate. Thank you, everyone, for coming out.
the Ubyssey again.
Thank you. Okay, welcome back everyone to the Board of Governors debate. I know most of you guys were here last time, but we'll quickly go over housekeeping rules again. Candidates are not permitted to use laptops during the debate. You can have a bare piece of paper. There's also an online form circulated to collect audience questions, and a reminder that candidates and volunteer from any campaigns cannot submit questions. Candidates will have 1 minute to make an opening statement, as well as 1 minute to make a closing statement. You will all receive 45 seconds to address moderator and audience questions, followed by an additional 30-second response time. If you would like to use it, I will give you a 15-second and 5-second warning, and please stop talking once your time is up. Was there any questions before we get started? Okay, then we will be starting with opening remarks. We're going to start with Drayden and then go this way.
Hey everyone, I'm Drayden Fontana. I'm running to be your next Board of Governors rep. In my few years as a student advocate, I've done a few things. I secured a seat on Ubyssey's co-op governing body, worked with the CFA director to publish lists of accommodations, secured $300,000 for student groups and a bunch more on my website, you can see. One thing that I'd really like to focus on me from other candidates is what my focus will be on financial transparency, especially for faculties. We've seen a tremendous growth in the size of faculty budgets, about half the university budget, or $2 billion. And I think with decreasing cuts or increasing cuts that we'll see from decreases in the number of international students, those cuts are going to be coming from faculty. So we should see where that money is going, and students should be actively involved in that process. Along with that increasing of financial transparency, we need to see increasing in centralized services, and we should see, as students have demanded, divestment from companies complicit in genocide, along with sub-inflationary tuition increase.
Thank you, candidates. Ladonna?
Hi everyone, I'm Susanna. I'm gonna go with the she/her pronouns, and I'm running to be on the board of governors. As in my previous role as 23-24 senator, I have had the chance to initiate the Student Senate Caucus Social Media Committee for the first time, and then also I was at the awards committee where I've advocated and delivered results for hundreds and thousands of scholarships and awards for international students, for persons with disabilities, for people with like part-time student qualifications, and then also for students with students from the indigenous communities. And for this year, for the board, my agenda is definitely divestment. I know there have been talks and projects going on every year, but we still see that the Ubyssey is not divesting from those companies who take part in human rights violations, genocide, and climate exploitations, exploiting lands of indigenous communities as well. So divesting for that, and also securing funding for food security, for student well-being, and
Thank you,
for
candidate.
housing.
Thank you. Brian?
Hi there. Hi there. My name is Brian Braga. I'm the sole graduate student running for one of the positions for student representative on the Board of Governors. And I'm the only person here who has previous experience sitting on a university Board of Governors. I have been very fortunate to have a wealth of experiences to bring to the table to serve students. In addition to previously being a student governor, I've worked in finance for 2 years. I know how people on the Board of Governors think. They think of financial, legal, and operational considerations. But one thing that I have particular experience in is reputational considerations. I've worked with student groups in the past at McGill University in my undergrad to advance student priorities by pressuring universities to do the right thing and advance student priorities, and I intend to do the same here if elected today. What I bring is a collaborative approach. There are 2 seats on the Board of Governors, and I'd be happy to work with anyone who brings that collaborative mindset to the table. I think it's important that we fight for students together, and I ask
Thank
for
you,
your vote.
candidate.
Thank you.
Jackie, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jackie, and I'm running to be a part of your next Ubyssey Board of Governors over the next year. A bit about me. I previously served as your Commerce Student Senator for the past 2 years. I've served on the CUS Board of Directors, and I've also volunteered with campaigns on campus such as Movement to Restore the 480 bus service, where I successfully led a campaign that gathered over 4,000 signatures in support of the bus route. I've also sat on the CUS's Budgetary Oversight Committee, which is one thing that I believe sets me apart from many other candidates in this race. cuts are inevitably coming to UBC's budgets. And I believe it's important that students have someone who's been on the other side of the table when it comes to making these cuts, who's heard all the arguments that students are making when it comes to justifying budgetary increases and reducing cuts. In terms of policy, I want to fight for RTA-style protections for students living in UBC housing, as well as commitment by UBC Housing to paying rent to a certain percentage below market rates. I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, candidate. Go ahead, Zarifa.
Hi everyone, my name is Zarifa and I'm running to be elected as your next student governor. As your two-term VPAOA and senator, I've secured over $2.8 million for students, including funding for undergraduate research opportunities and food security. I've doubled the International Community Achievement Award, and I've also led policy reviews on the Center for Better Policies on Gen AI used by students. Now, I want to take this track record and deliver results for you on the UBC Board of Governors. As your next student governor, I will focus on securing a multi-year commitment for food security funding, advocating for more low-cost and high-density student housing by leveraging donor opportunities, fighting tuition increases, establishing needs-based aid for international students, reviewing policy LR7 for disability accommodations, and increasing funding for the Center for Accessibility and increasing workload funding. Thank you so much for being here, and I hope that on March 9th, I can count on your support.
Thank you, candidate. Okay, we'll be starting with our first question. Universities across the province are facing a financial crisis. UBC continues to raise tuition despite student pushback. What is your stance on tuition increases, and how do you plan to balance student needs while the university faces financial hardship? Sultana, you're up first.
Yeah, I think a key approach to that, to the budget cuts from the provinces, it would be lobbying, like negotiating with the provinces and the federal, getting federal funding, provincial funding to help with those budgets. Because yeah, the tuition fee is increased at least really, it's not feasible in my opinion. If every year we keep increasing like 3% and 6% or like 2%, 4%, like to domestic and international, and international students
the university away from producing workers over time and shifting back into areas of knowledge sharing and keeping. And all.
Thank you, Candace. For additional response time, Zarifa?
I'll answer this and say one of the ways that we can make education in the current system feel more like it is a cultivation of knowledge and you're not just a number, it's not just about the grades, is by making education accessible, by redesigning courses to be universally applicable for students of diverse learning strategies. So integrating UDL more broadly into the university framework and into teaching and learning as a whole is very important. Other similar things like, an exam database, academic integrity, all of these things enrich the student experience, the academic experience in particular, and I will be pushing for that to be improved.
Thank you, candidate. Brian?
Yeah, thank you. Decolonization isn't a metaphor. It's in the current context we're speaking to. That being said, I recognize that we're not going to get there overnight. What I intend to bring to the board is this framework for which to start from in partnership with Musqueam and other First Nations that the university works with. It's important that we start this work now and continue it on into the future.
Thank you, candidate.
Why did you have to change to AMS policies and we've reported on the past, he'll be doing that. You guys will just
Spencer.
Yes.
What? Okay, let's start.
Yes. I guess we. I'll cut.
Okay. Do you want to give like the announcement to start?
That's how you get. Could someone?
Hi guys, sorry about the delay, but we're gonna get started with the VP external debate.
Thank you. Okay, welcome everyone to the VP external debate. We're gonna get started now. For debate rules, candidates are not permitted to use laptops. You can have a sheet of paper with a pencil. You will have 1 minute to make an opening statement and 1 minute to make a closing statement. You will receive 45 seconds to respond to either moderator or audience questions, followed by an additional 30-second response time if you'd like to use it. I will give you a 15-second and 5-second warning, and please stop talking once your time is up. Do you have any questions before we get started? Okay, perfect. Then you can start with your opening statement. Thank you, candidate.
Good morning, committee. Good morning, everyone. I'm Alex Lejeune, your humble candidate for the VP External Affair role at the AMS for the following year. I am running with 3 goals in mind: to secure the important projects from this year, to amplify the student voice in a challenging time, and to lay another solid foundation for students in the future. We have seen what advocacy can do, from transit upgrades to wins for students and residents, but the work isn't done. With city elections popping up later this year, this is an opportunity to push for rental protection and student-focused housing. I will also boost job pathways with support of work learn and connection with the industry. I will try to unite with other post-secondary schools to make sure our collective voice is heard. I'm ready to build on our wins and go further. Thank you.
Thank you, candidate. On to the first question. The VP External has a wide portfolio. What are your top priorities?
My current top priorities are first in housing. So as I said, in the upcoming elections in 2026, it's popping up across the Lower Mainland from Vancouver to Burnaby. Around 80% of our students are commuter students, meaning they live in such areas. So it is a very good opportunity for us to focus on this election as a way to push for policies and movement for student housing and keeping living our residents affordable and in the city beneficial. Additionally, it's a job, expand, work, learn, and create job pipelines. And finally, setting up student coalitions, boosting what we already have in connection with the other institutes, and to have a student collective voice.
Thank you, candidate. Would you like to use your additional response time? Okay. Moving on to the next question. You will be advocating to all levels of government. How do you plan to deal with government officials who may dismiss you because of your age or because you're working on a 1-year term, and ensure you are securing results for students and not just handshakes?
I believe when in this line of work, persistence is the key. Now, of course, dismissal will always come. It's an expectation I have walking into this role, and I believe through negotiation, through going around and speaking with other individuals and uniting student voices, having the student presence on board, having the student voice out there, having movement, it will be a pressure they cannot deny for a long period of time. It may be a march uphill, but I believe it is a march we will complete.
Thank you, candidate. As you mentioned, municipal elections are coming up. How do you plan to represent student interests to so many parties and candidates with so many cities in Metro Vancouver?
Now, here at UBC, we have tons of talent. Many of them come from diverse backgrounds, different locations. So I believe the first step in doing this properly is to understand what the students are actually facing. The first thing is to conduct a proper student survey, knowing what is actually at stake, knowing what is actually needed, and taking that information and moving from that point forward in adapting strategies to different regions, to different candidates, and setting up different talks. I believe that is the correct direction in terms of approaching this thing.
Thank you, candidate. Despite the current BPO externals advocacy for a SkyTrain to UBC, obstacles remain. The business case isn't complete, and TransLink has said it doesn't have the money to operate such a system. Is the SkyTrain still a big priority for you?
Absolutely. So our VP external this year, they have worked very hard with our team. I believe it is a step in the right direction. Being a commuter student myself, I understand the importance of having a strong TransLink system, and SkyTrain is a huge aspect. So yes, it will definitely be one of the main concerns. As I said, I want to continue the good work from this year.
Thank you, candidate. Most of the issues we're talking about here have been talked about for decades. How have you been learning about the history of these policy discussions and informing yourself to be the next VP external? Where do you need to grow your knowledge base?
As a VP external, I believe I am to work as the spokesperson for the general student interest, to work as a platform where students can have their voice heard, where no outlook is too small. So once again, the first step is to connect with the student body to understand what is their need, what is their viewpoints on current things. As the years approach, every year it may be slightly different. So it is always important to go and speak with the students. And from that point forward, I can formulate the way we can address all these issues or all these long-term problems. Once again, if they've been here for a decade, I don't expect to be able to solve them overnight, but I am more than willing to build a platform so people later on can absolutely end the issue.
Thank you, candidate. The province won't commit to more funding for post-secondary institutions, and international student tuition revenue is no longer a feasible option. Who are you going to call on to fund universities?
This is a difficult question. So as we stand right now, we are definitely facing a very difficult challenge. Funding is a huge issue, as we have learned for the past year and even beyond that. So the answer to that would most likely be across the entire spectrum, everything from industry members all the way to potential sponsors.
Thank you, candidate. How do you plan to move forward with introducing renter protection for students? How would you convince the province to amend the Residential Tenancy Act to bring student residents within its jurisdiction?
Well, once again, a good place to start would to be connecting with the students. To have a united student voice, it means a strong presence, a presence that they cannot dismiss easily in the upcoming 2026 election. That is a very good place to start. We have the students living, we have the voter base, regardless if it is for the premier or other candidates, including the one who is in charge of provincial affairs. So municipal affairs as well. So it is a good starting point where we can start talks over here and secure, I guess, anything possible for the students on campus.
Thank you, candidate. International students have continued to be put into a tough spot with universities. How do you plan to properly platform protecting international student needs when they may differ from those of domestic students?
Based on my understanding, here at UBC, we have a very large percentage of students that is international students, and they're a very important member of our larger community over here at UBC. So once again, the first step is to speak with students, to speak with the international students and understand what is their top priority, what is their top challenges, and move forward from there. Because once again, if we can have a united student voice, we can begin talks, we can begin negotiation, we can begin pushes for a change for the better.
Thank you, candidate. Now on to closing remarks. You have a minute.
Thank you, committee. Thank you, everyone, for your time and questions today. Running uncontested doesn't mean I'm running unaccountable. I'm here because I believe in the work on building what we have started, the work of amplifying student voices when they need to be heard the most, and to lay foundations that will outlast my time in this role. Whether it's housing, job, or building student coalitions across the province, I'll show up to listen, to learn, and to fight for what matters to you.
Thank you, Candid. And that is the end of the VP external debate.